This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, and you're listening to Python's Paradise, your film and music show. And this is your host, Greg Gilbert, a.k.a. the Python Hyena. And folks, right about when I was 4 years old, a little film came out called The Bad News Bears, which, of course, set the trend for sports movies and sports comedies. And I happen to have one of the bears on the phone with me tonight. Yes, I have the catcher himself, Gary Cavagnaro. How do you do, Gary?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Steve Joyner said lots of great stuff about you. He was my first interview this year, and boy, he sent a lot of folks my way. How did you come to meet Steve?
I'll be very honest with you. I don't even remember. I think he was scheduling interviews for a radio station out in California around the time Walter passed away, and had given me a call. I believe that's where I first met him. But I've known Steve probably 8, 9, 10 years now, and we've kept in touch. And from time to time, he'll send folks my way who, for one reason or another, still want to talk about Bad News Bears, and I'm always willing to do so.
Well, I've never personally met Steve. I know he's 4 hours behind me there in California, but I'm guessing, excuse me, I think he had contacted me through an actress. I interviewed an actress from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, Lisa Wilcox, and I think he added me on Facebook through her. I'm guessing. I don't know this for sure, but at the time she was the only one we had in common. And I looked over his profile. I was like, okay, involved in the business and whatnot. So he didn't strike me as a sketchy character, so I added him, accepted his request, and been looking at some of his posts. And at the beginning of this year, I reached out to him. I said, hey, come on my show. I want to hear your story. And he told his story, and it's led me to other stories, such as yourself.
Well, yeah. So you interviewed him and you found out how sketchy a character he really was. That's what you're saying.
Well, a good sketchy character.
Great guy. He's a really great guy.
He is a great guy, and very passionate about what he does. And I live in the Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. You know where that is?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, we are in.
I know you're north of me. Let's put it that way.
We got lots of snow here.
Well, it was 80 degrees here today. So. Oh,
thanks for sharing that with me. So you're in Texas, huh?
Yes, sir, I am.
I've done a lot of interviews from folks in Texas. And you guys have that beautiful weather, and we're here. We had a snowstorm here last week. The snow went right up to our door locks on our car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've never had one like that. A few years ago, we got about 22, 23 inches, and that's the heaviest snowfall in recorded history for Texas, or for North Texas at least. So, but you have the cold. I have the 110-degree days in the summer. So, you can always put on more clothes. There's a limit to how much they'll let you take off and walk around town in. So, I like the cold better than the hot.
Oh, okay. Well, I kind of like a mixture of the two, but I'm going to tell you, driving home here last week one time, because I live about 20 minutes out of town, and I'm going to tell you, it took me 5 minutes just to get out of the parking lot, because I got done an interview here, and I stepped outside, and it was storming out, and I was like, oh, because the curtain was drawn. I was like, what did I just walk out into? And it took, my 20-minute drive took me like 40 minutes,
Right.
Yeah, it was not fun. But something that is fun, of course, is the Bad News Bears. And how, of course, did you were a child star in that movie. Now, did you just go through a standard audition to get the part as the catcher?
Yeah, what they did was they had what they called a cattle call, and gosh, I want to say it was like 20,000 kids in 40 cities in the U.S. that they went out and interviewed. And of course, back then it was before videotape or any of the conveniences they have now. So they'd go into a city, they'd narrow it down to a handful of kids that they found were interesting, and then Michael Ritchie and Stanley Jaffe, the director and producer, would come in town and interview those kids. And so, I mean, gosh, it was really rough on them. Lots of travel, going ping-ponging across the country, seeing all these kids that the agents would call out, and the casting director. And I was fortunate. I was the only one from Texas that was chosen. So we had Alfred and Chris Ogilvie, who played Ogilvie and Tanner, and Scott Firestone, who played Reggie, the third baseman. They were all from New Jersey, or New York or New Jersey. And then I was from Texas, and then everybody else was basically from the Southern California area.
Well, I'm trying to think the name of your character up the top.
Engelberg.
Engelberg, okay. Did you have much experience playing baseball prior to this?
Oh, back then, I mean, we're talking, 1975 was when we filmed it. That was back then still the national pastime. Every kid was on a little league team and played baseball, and it was a healthy, it was a healthy childhood activity to do. Not so much now anymore. I don't know the last time I saw a little league team playing around here. The football has, especially here in Texas, football has really taken over and become king. But back then it was still baseball, and so I'd played some little league. I was not a catcher. I played first base and outfield when I was a little kid, and it wasn't altogether familiar for me what I was doing there. And what they wanted us to be was what they got, a bunch of kids. It was actually the less experience you had in playing baseball, the better they liked you.
Oh, and of course that added to the comedy.
Right. They wanted us to be really god awful when we got out there, and several of us were, myself included. So it was a lot of fun, but it was certainly a unique experience, to put it that way.
Now, I'm not going to give the ending of the film away here, but I'm going to say this. I love the ending, and I love the ending because it's not what you typically expect, and I think it made the movie, especially the writing of the film, a lot more clever, a little more down to earth than what you typically see out of these sports comedies or sports movies in general.
Well, yeah, I would agree to that. And it's funny because none of us really even knew what the ending was going to be. Michael and Stanley kept it a secret. I mean, we knew, hey, we were either going to win or we were going to lose, but they actually filmed two endings.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The ending that was in the movie, they filmed an ending where we won. And until the USA Film Festival, which is where the movie premiered in my hometown at Southern Methodist University, also my alma mater. Until then, none of us knew how it was going to end. So after I got to see it first, I called all the guys and said, "We lose, darn it, we lose." So, but they intentionally kept us in the dark on that one.
Yeah, and of course, Michael Ritchie, the director, he went on to have quite a stellar career directing, especially went on, Fletch and stuff like that. And of course, he's no longer with us. What was he like as a director, especially directing kids?
Michael was a big kid. I mean, he came to work one day with a bright yellow T-shirt on in dark blue letters. He had it, back then you had the transfers where you could go to a shop and pick out letters and they'd write something on your shirt. I guess you still do that, you just don't see it that much here. these days, but he had written on there Gary Cavagnaro Fan Club. And he walked in, didn't say anything to anybody, just took his seat in his director's chair, and he's wearing that shirt. And everybody started laughing. I'm looking at him like, oh, that's kind of neat. So, I mean, he was just a big kid. I turned 12 on the set, and I came to the set that morning, and they said, you know, we're gonna have to refilm the backstop scene where Walter and I are arguing because there's chocolate on baseball, and I bend over and pick up the ball and fling it and throw it, and it breaks his windshield. So I'm like, I thought we had that finished. And they said, no, we're going to have to do that again. So, okay. So I put on my I'm Available T-shirt, which was the big joke. I had a not baseball cap. I don't even know which, a hat with the top cut out, so all my hair would, you know, it was like a visor back then, but it had a full brim on it. And I put that on in my shorts, and I go out there, and I say my line, I bend over, I pick up the baseball, I turn around to fling it, and Michael and Stanley throw 2 cream pies in my face. and you know, happy birthday. And they got the whole thing on film, and of course, I pick up the pie, chase them around, and start throwing the pie at them. And it was regular, you know, it was a food fight before you had the Animal House food fight. So that was a lot of fun, you know, and they made it fun for the kids. So we really enjoyed it.
Who was all involved in the food fight? I love that kind of humor.
Oh yeah, well, primarily it was Stanley, Michael, and myself. A few others got hit.
Well, you had an interesting group of people you worked with on there. You have, of course, Walter Matthau, and Walter Matthau, you know, like we loved him with all these movies he did with Jack Lemmon, like The Odd Couple and whatnot. He's really good at playing a lovable grouch, and of course he plays that reluctant coach in this movie. Any stories to share about him?
Oh, Walter, gosh, yeah. I mean, when Walter passed away, we lost a great person. Probably next to my dad, he was the most important adult male in my life growing up. You know, just a really good-hearted man. You know, I was an overweight kid. Some of the other guys would have their days where they would tease me and so forth, and I'd get down, and he'd see that, and he's always constantly coming around, you know, kind of picking me up. One particularly bad day that I had while I was out there, because I had gone to the doctor, and the doctor said, you know, you need to lose weight. You're too big. You're gonna be in a wheelchair by the time you're 18. You're gonna be dead by the time you're 25. Because I was 5 foot 200 and about 20 pounds back then, and you know, it's not like I gained a lot of weight for the movie. I was a big kid all along, but my pediatrician at home had always treated me with kid gloves. But this guy out there just laid into me. So I came back to say I was very, very unhappy, very scared. You know, 11, 12-year-old kid being told he's going to die if he doesn't shape up is not it's not a good thing to hear. And Walter, I guess my mother had told Walter what had happened, and so later on in the day, Jack Lemmon came to the set to visit, and they were going to go to lunch, and Walter walked over and he said, Gary, come with me. And I said, okay, Mr. Matthau, and I'll walk with him. And we walk over to Jack Lemmon's Rolls Royce, that you know, limo, and he goes, hop in. And I said, excuse me? He goes, hop in, we're going to go to lunch. I said, really? And he goes, yeah. So I get in the car, and it's he and I and Jack Lemmon and Jack Lemmon's driver going down to Love's Barbecue to have lunch, and him talking to me and Jack talking to me. Just genuinely nice men. So, you know, he was very, very, just a very, very nice man. You know, but can't say it enough. Just a great guy.
He didn't try to talk Jack Lemmon into coaching the team?
No, not that time.
Wow,
But
those two remain friends for so long, and they're a wonderful combination. Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon, they're just terrific, and it didn't matter whether one was the straight man, one was the funny guy, or I've seen them. They both were winners, regardless which one they played. You know?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Like you look at The Odd Couple, it's Walter Matthau, that's the straight man, and it's Jack Lemmon who's being the really funny one. But then you watch like Out to Sea, and it's the opposite. It's Walter Matthau that's being the pratfaller and the funny guy, and Jack Lemmon being the straight guy. So they were able to do that really well, and they were great playing off each other that way. Did they make you laugh in the car?
Oh gosh, yes. Oh gosh. Walt. They would do their old vaudeville routines because that's Walter and Jack were vaudeville actors, stars. That's where they came from. And we'd get there, and they would do these vaudeville routines. There was at the time, I guess there still is. They called it the Jackie Coogan Law, or the Shirley Temple Law, depending upon what generation you were. Basically said that actors that were minors had to have guardians on the set. So all of us had our, back again, not to be sexist or anything. You looked at the times back then, in the early to mid 70s, husbands worked, wives stayed home with the kids, right? So, we all had our moms there because the dads were out working and earning a living. Well before the feminist movement, right? And they were happy to be there with us. And so they had taken this park in the San Fernando Valley and built it out of nothing. I go out there now, and that park has got homes and condos and everything all around it, all right up to the edges of the park. But back then, it was farmland out there, and they built this beautiful little park out of nothing. Big, huge trees all around the baseball field. I don't know if you can see it in some of the shots. And the mothers would sit in their lawn chairs out in the shade under the trees, and they'd watch us filming. And in the area between the refreshment stand and the baseball diamond.
Okay.
And Walter and Jack would go down there during breaks because Jack was there quite a bit. And they'd go down during breaks, and they'd do their old vaudeville routines for the mothers to keep them entertained. and they just stand there and they just go through one that, like, Walter would look over to Jack and says, "Hey Jack." No response. "Jack, you got a banana in your ear." And Jack would look over and say, "I'm sorry, Walter, I can't hear you. I've got a banana in my ear." Just real corny vaudeville stuff like that. Or, Is your refrigerator running?" "Well, of course it is." "You better hurry up and catch it then." So those, things that today just sound so silly and stupid. Back then, again, it was a more innocent time, and the mothers would sit there and they'd just listen to Jack and Walter for hour and a half, go through some of these jokes and just giggle, and it was that's the type of person Walter was, and Jack as well. Just really humble, down to earth, not pretentious, nothing like, I'm going to go ahead and say it, nothing like many of the Hollywood stars today who think that their fame and notoriety gives them a position of some special position to espouse their feelings to everyone, whether you agree or don't agree. Walter and Jack and Burt Lancaster and that whole John Wayne, that whole group who came up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they were just normal guys who would look around and they couldn't believe their good fortune. And so they were just genuine human beings. I look today at some of the stuff you see, and it's like part of the issue is these people in Hollywood today, they just don't understand what normal, everyday people have to go through. And so it's much more difficult for them, to associate with just a normal guy who goes to work every day and works a 9-to-5 job. But Walter and Jack and Bert and John Wayne, they'd all gone through times when they were hungry. They weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They all came to acting fairly late in life, other than John Wayne, who started right out of college, or actually in college. But the others, they all came to it, in their late 20s, early 30s. So they had those lean years on the front end where, they didn't know how they were going to make a house payment. So they were just genuine people.
Yeah, you mentioned celebrities today, and it's kind of sad when I look at the news and you got, I hate to point out names, but Justin Bieber urinating in a mop bucket when, that's some custodian's going to clean up, and that just really disgusts me, or some of the stuff you see Kanye West getting away with, and I think they're both talented individuals, but I think their attitudes are absolutely pathetic.
And I would agree. And as a society, we got nobody to blame but ourselves. We're the ones that have put people on a pedestal. And again, I'm not. There's wonderful people out in Hollywood. There's horrible people out in Hollywood. Just like every other city, every other walk of life. You have your good and your bad. I agree with what some of these people say. I disagree with what some of these people say. My issue with all of them is that they think they have the right to say anything to anybody because they're put there to entertain.
Mm-hmm.
I go to a movie to see it to be entertained. I go to a concert to hear music. I go to a play to watch a play. I don't go there to hear these people who I'm actually paying tell me their feelings on politics or social issues. That's not what I go there for. That's not the venue. And so, our world and Hollywood in general, and our world, or specifically our world in general, it's kind of gone nutso in the last few years here.
Yeah.
But I digress. That really has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Other than I just cannot. You had asked me about Walter, and I cannot tell you how genuinely good a person he was. I can't overemphasize that enough. He's just a wonderful, wonderful man.
And of course, Vic Morrow played the coach of the Yankees in it. Now, what was he like?
Oh gosh, Vic was. Again, I really got along well with Vic because he was. I told you the story about the pies, and when I was surprised, so I jumped up and started picking the pieces up and started chasing Michael and Stanley around, throwing the pie at them. Vic came over to me afterward and he goes, "Gotta tell you, you really showed me something." I said, "Excuse, what's that? What do you mean, Mr. Moore?" He goes, "You got some balls, kid. The way you picked up that pie and ran after, you got some real balls." He goes, "I like that." Yeah, and so I mean, he was in real life in many ways the same character he played in Combat. He was just a little bit morose, but a good guy. I mean, he had gone through some real, all those guys, Lemmon, Walter Matthau, Vic. They'd all gone through times when, their bouts with alcoholism, and that was the drug of the 60s and 70s in Hollywood, right? And they were all, by the time they came to Bad News Bears, they'd all dried up and gotten on with their life. But I guess it had cost Vic personally a lot more in his personal life than it had ultimately cost Walter and Jack. So he was a little bit more sullen than they were, but he was really, really super nice with the kids, myself and everyone else. Such a tragedy. I mean, I was heartbroken when I heard later on when he was doing the filming of Twilight Zone that he had died so tragically. I mean, just because he was really coming back into his own. He was starting to get a resurgence in his popularity. His career taken back off, and to have something like that happen was just terrible. But you know, by and large, we were very fortunate. We, the kids, were very fortunate that we didn't have the younger generation of actors like Ryan O'Neal and Barbara Streisand, that group, which were very intolerant. They were, I guess, the me generation of actors. It was all about them and what they wanted and everything else. We didn't have any of them in the movie. We had the older generation, and they were respectful to our parents. They were respectful to us, which really blew all of us kids away. I mean, here's Walter Matthau being respectful to us and telling us that we did a good job here. And it's like, man, he's a big movie star. What's he telling me that for? So we were just really, really fortunate with the adult actors that were on that set and the crew. Michael and Stanley did a great job of picking a crew that could work with young kids. And you got to remember, back then, there weren't a lot of movies that had lots of young kids in them.
Nope.
This was kind of you see it all the time now with I'm trying to. There was kind of almost a remake of Bad News Bears, where Sandlot,
yeah,
the Sandlot, and some of these other, and the Mighty Ducks. But this was really the first movie where they had the majority of the actors were kids, and so they did really a fantastic job of picking a crew that worked really, really well with a bunch of young kids. John Alonzo was the director of cinematography, very well known, well respected. I think John has passed away now as well. But I mean, he would bring us in and into his sound room. He'd show us what he was doing. He'd show us how things worked. Just infinite patience of a man working with 13 or 14 kids that were anywhere from 8 to 12 years old. Which everybody knows is the best age for kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just as far as lack of attention, lack of respect, and ADD galore. But they just did a great job with us.
Another adult that was in the cast, of course, was Joyce Van Patten as the league manager.
Right, and we all knew Joyce. None of us had seen anything really that we knew of that Joyce had been in, but we knew her brother, Dick, was the father on 8 is Enough, which was a real popular TV show back then. And so, boy, she had creds right away because we all watched that show. That was a great show. That was from a TV standpoint, that was one of the first ones that had a bunch of young kids in it, that and the Waltons. But she, they again, they just did a really good job of working in a situation that none of those adult actors were really familiar with, working with lots of kids. So, we're so blessed that we had that group of people there, and they individually and as a group took us under their wing, and so much of what played out on the screen is a tribute to them doing that, because with 13, 14 young kids on the screen, on the set, that thing could have gone haywire real quick. And in fact, a couple of the last one, Bad News Bears Go to Japan, I wasn't in it, but I've talked to several of the guys, and that was a case where one really, really did go haywire. And you look at it and you see that the product that they put out was nowhere near the quality of the first movie or the second one, and it had to do with the fact that everybody was backbiting, everybody was fighting in the background of the film. So
you were in the second one?
No, I was not. I was not in the second or the third. I had, as I said, I had gone to a doctor when I was in the first one. I'd gotten sick out there, bronchitis, and I went out, and the doctor had basically read me the riot act about weight and what I needed to do and what I could and couldn't do. And it was a case of scared straight, right? So I went from that doctor's office and went on a very strict regimen. And you can, if you look at the movie, you can see I lost about 40 pounds in the course of the movie. about 30 pounds in the course of the movie. But by the time the second movie came along, I'd gone from 220 to about 150, and I had grown about 7 inches. So I was a normal sized kid, and they called and said, "Well, we'd like you to do the movie. We need you to gain 50 or 60 pounds." And I shut them down. I said, "No, I'm not going to do that. It's not worth it. I'm not going to die."
I hadn't seen the sequels. That's why I asked.
Right. Yeah. So I did not do the sequels. They went out and got another. They said, "Well, we really want you." And I said, "Well, if you really want me, then write it into the script that I lost weight." "Well, that's not funny." "Well, okay." So, and my parents were right there with me. They knew the danger, the health danger, and everything involved. So they were right there with me, saying, "No, if he doesn't want to do it, he doesn't want to do it. That's it."
It's sad that they'd take that attitude about it too. That
Right.
the people behind the film. That it just seems to me they didn't seem to care about your health.
Of course they didn't. I mean, again, the second one was, had it been Michael and Stanley, I think it would have been totally different. But the second one was a different director, different producer. The original movie was such a success. It was the number 1 or 2 grossing movie of the year, and it had not been intended to be a big movie. So it was such a success that they went out and they said, "We're going to get these big time directors and producers," which I always thought, Stanley was a former president of Paramount Studios, and Michael had done Downhill Racer, The Candidate, Day of the Dolphin already, which were all big, critically acclaimed movies. But he didn't want to do another one of he didn't want to do the sequel thing. He had done, Michael was been there, done that. Let's go to the next thing.
Well,
So the second one was a different group, and they were interested in making this a big movie that made big money.
Even Matthau was not back for the sequels.
No, it was oh gosh, I can't. William Devane did the Breaking Training, and Tony Curtis did Bad News Bears Go to Japan.
Well, there was a lot of great breakthrough child stars in that movie. Who can forget, of course, Tatum O'Neal, who was already quite established, but
Actually, Tatum had only done one movie before Bad News Bears. I don't know if you knew that.
With Paper Moon. Was it Paper Moon?
Yeah, she did Paper Moon.
Yeah.
She did that. Her first movie, she won an Academy Award. So she wasn't, to say she was established, she done one movie with her dad.
Actually, you know what? I actually didn't know that because prior to this, I didn't look that. I knew she did Paper Moon, but I was like, she must have did that. Must be 3 or 4 years before Bad News Bears.
No, it was about 18 months. Well, they filmed it probably 2.5 years before Bad News Bears. Then it took a half year to to be released, and it had been out for about a year and a half.
Okay.
So she had won the Academy Award, and this was a year afterwards.
Okay.
They had been looking for a project for her.
Okay.
But, this movie was not supposed to be big. Interestingly enough, Bad News Bears, I mentioned Burt Lancaster earlier.
Mm-hmm.
His son Bill was the screenplay writer.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody at Paramount owed Burt a favor, and Burt said, "Well, I tell you what, make my son's movie." And so this was a favor to Burt by some bigwig at Paramount to make this movie. So when they cast all of us kids, it was just going to be something a little B movie. And they got us out in Hollywood, and they had us running through lines for a week at Paramount. And somewhere along the line, they said, "Hey, we haven't got any big blockbusters for the summer. Why don't we make a push with this little movie of Bill Lancaster's? Let's make a little push with this and put some talent on there." So they went out and hired Walter and hired Tatum, and brought them in a week after we had all gotten to Hollywood.
What was Tatum like to work with?
Boy, as you can imagine, she was a little pill at the first. She came on, she had won the Academy Award. She was the son of a well-known, or the daughter of a well-known actor, who was of that me generation, and he passed that on down to her. So when she first got out there, she was a bit of a pill. But after a week or two, she was just another one of the kids. Because at the end of the day, that's what she was. She was just a kid like the rest of us.
And of course, Jackie Earl Haley was in that as well. He's you still see him around quite a bit today. I guess he was the new Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot.
Well, he was in that. He was in, what was it? Kingfish was the movie, the kind of the parallel to Huey B. Long, and he was the bodyguard. That's where what's his name? Played Spicoli in Crisis at Central High.
Sean Penn.
Sean Penn, yeah. Sean Penn was doing this movie, and Jackie was out of acting for 20 years. He had a limo company and a small production company that he was doing in San Antonio. And when Sean Penn was going to do this, they said, "Hey, we need a special look on this person that's going to be your bodyguard." And of course, he remembered Jackie from our day. We were all running around Paramount Studios for a couple of weeks in '75, and he was out there too. And so we had gotten to know some of the other kids, the cast from Little House on the Prairie and the cast from Happy Days, and so he had remembered Jackie and said, "This guy would be perfect if we could find him." And so he went and found Jackie, brought him out. I think Jackie was a little bit hesitant, but to get back into it, but he did, and he ended up getting nominated for an Academy Award. He didn't win it, but that just kind of fired his career again. So Jackie's back doing it. Of course, the rest of us had small careers after Bad News Bears. I know Chris Barnes, who's basically stayed in the out of the spotlight on all these reunions and everything. Chris is independent producer. Scott Firestone produced for Hard Copy for a long time now. He's doing his own indie films. Brett Marks, who I guess is the great grandson of Harpo Marx, who played who played I've forgotten his name in the movie. Jimmy Phelps, I think it was. But I mean, he's a producer. So they're all still connected, or a lot of them are still connected, but they're not acting anymore, other than Jackie.
It's interesting you mention Chris Barnes, because I guess there was a little controversy with the film because of profanity associated with his character.
Yeah, hey, Chris's family, his mother and dad, just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Christian people, and they were not expecting what they got when we all went out there and did the film. They did the second film, and it got even worse, his character. And so by the time the third film came around, they asked for script approval in his contract, and Paramount said no, and they said, well, then he's not going to be in it. So, but Chris was my best friend when we were doing the movie. As a matter of fact, he came down to Dallas and visited me right after the movie came out, and we went to the theater in Dallas where the movie had premiered, not the film festival, but the actual premiere at pay theaters, right? We went there together and saw the movie. But his parents were, as I said, they had, I think, 6 or 7 kids. Chris was either the youngest or the second youngest, I can't remember. And that's just not something that they cared for their son to do. And you got to respect the fact that people were throwing all sorts of money at him, and they said, no, that's not what we want for our son. And they stood firm on it. So, like I said, you got to respect that. You really do.
Sure. Just a curious question. Did you see the remake of Bad News Bears?
Actually, I did. My son Blake, my middle boy, and my youngest boy Gary Jr. actually auditioned for it. Gary would have been auditioning for the role of Tanner, and Blake did the role of Engelberg.
Okay.
And so I took him to the auditions, and my son Blake made it. He was the final cut. Again, he just wasn't big enough. He didn't weigh enough. So, I went with him, and he was running through some lines. He said, "Well, your dad could probably do this from memory." And I looked at some of the things that they were saying. I said, if I'd said this in 1975, they would have arrested Michael and Stanley for allowing a kid to say this. The biggest obscenity in our movie was when I told Walter, when he asked me, or he told me that my father was going to pay for his windshield, and I said BS, the full word,
Yep.
Or phrase. That was the biggest obscenity in ours. But they were talking about some things, at least in the audition. Even some of it came out in the movie that would have, would have made a sailor blush the way they were talking. So it was a good experience for me. I've never once been sorry, though, that my son didn't do it.
Well, I was not a big fan of the remake. I do like Billy Bob Thornton, though, so, but I think he was kind of rehashing the great job he did in Bad Santa, and he kind of got typed to that. And I loved him in Bad Santa, but and I think he's a mighty fine actor. Did you meet him when you took your son to the audition?
No, I did not.
No?
No, I did not, no.
Well, Bad News Bears has paved the way to all these kid sports movies you see today, and I think Bad News Bears is more than likely, to me, the best of the bunch. And I think it was clever. It set the trend, and I don't think too many of them came after really improved upon it. I mean, what do you think of this all these years later?
Boy, all these years later, what is it? It's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to you about it right now on the phone, and you're in Canada, I'm in Texas. So what do you say? It's just amazing that the legs that this thing has had. It's just amazing.
You did another movie that I have not seen, but I've watched some clips from it today, and it looks like something that would be right up my alley, called Drive-In, because I remember the drive-in theaters. My parents used to take me and my older and younger brother to the drive-in theater. We don't have them here anymore. They disappeared in the mid-'80s here, but I remember saw the Star Wars trilogy and Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. the Extraterrestrial and all kinds of stuff on the drive-in. And I was looking at the trailer for this movie, and I'm like, man, I gotta see this. This really plays around with and you got more of a central role in this movie.
Yeah, I was actually the only person in the cast who'd ever acted before. So I had. I was one of two main characters in it, and I got really good billing in it. And of course, that was done by Rod Amato was the director, and his claim to fame was he had done Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay, I've interviewed somebody from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, actually. I had Terry McMinn on here last year, who was the meat hook victim from it. She's a very nice woman. But
so that it was a neat little. It started out as an independent film. Columbia ended up buying it and putting it out under their banner. But it was the things that happened in a small Texas town drive-in on a Saturday night, and you had two guys robbing the drive-in. You had my older brother, who was a nerd, going out with the hottest girl in school who had just broken up with the leader of one of the gangs, one of two gangs in there. You had the aforementioned two gangs meeting to do a rumble at the drive-in, and you had Kent Perkins, who subsequently married Ruth Buzzy, played a character who was bringing his girlfriend. He was going to propose to her at the drive-in, and I was kind of the central character. I was walking through all of that, so I touched all these things that were going on. I was taken prisoner by the thieves. I got in the midst of my brother's fights. Not to mention his love affair, because this girl suddenly fell in love with him toward the end of the movie because of what he did. I interrupted Kent's proposal to his girlfriend, so I was kind of the thread that connected them all, and it was a lot of fun. Oddly enough, the movie that we were seeing at the drive-in was a fictional movie called Disaster 76, and one of the disasters in that movie was an airplane crashing into the Empire State Building.
Oh.
So, that it kind of came back and bit us in the rear later, years later. But because that was actually the movie poster showed an airplane sticking out of the Empire State Building.
Oh boy.
So,
predicting.
But it was a lot of fun. It was filmed in Terrell, Texas, which either coincidentally or not is the home of the state mental hospital in Texas. So we had some crazy folks in that cast, but it was just a lot of fun.
What was it like playing the lead character in a movie? More pressure?
No, not really. I was the youngest one in the cast. It was a little bit lonesome, but it was fun. But at that age, that was 2 weeks after Bad News Bears, so I was 13 years of age. You don't feel pressure. You're just a kid having fun.
Well, there were some lovely ladies in that movie. Lisa Lamole.
Yeah.
What was your memories of her?
Lisa played my brother's girlfriend, Glenn Morshower. Glenn's gone on to be a very, very well-respected and well-known character actor. I can't turn on TV without seeing Glenn on something. But she was his girlfriend. She was the beautiful girlfriend who had broken up with a gang member and was going out with a nerd. But she was a sweet girl. I had a crush on her as well as Ashley Cox, who
I was just going to ask about her too.
Yeah, Ashley was a playmate for Playboy after the movie. But I had a huge crush on them. They were beautiful, beautiful, beautiful girls. And I was 13, 14 years old, just starting puberty. By God, the hormones were raging.
Well, since I haven't seen the movie, I got to ask you: did any of them let you kiss them?
In the movie?
Yeah.
Or in real life?
In real life.
Oh, sure, but it was like not passionate. Heck, I was 13, 14 years old. They would have been arrested.
No, I don't mean passionately.
21.
Back when you're that age, you just take it on the cheek. Back in that age.
Oh, right. They were beautiful girls, both of them, and I had a crush on both of them for years. Glenn, as I said, my brother in the movie, Glenn Morshower, another Dallas, and this was all a local cast, by the way. They were all from Dallas-Fort Worth area. And Glenn graduated from Hillcrest High School, probably half an hour away from my high school. My father had known his dad. So we got to be very close and almost a real brother relationship. Like I said, Glenn's gone on to be he's been in the Under Siege movies that Seagal did. He's been in all the Transformer movies. He's General Morshower in the Transformer movies.
Okay.
He was in Friday Night Lights. He had a recurring role there. In NCIS, not NCIS, what's the police show that took place in Las Vegas? Recurring show and part in that. Several of the Netflix series he's been in. Again, he's really well respected. He comes down. He's also a motivational speaker, and he came back to town probably 2-3 years ago, and they honored him at a local film festival, and he asked me to be there, and I was, and I got to see Lisa again, and she was there, and Kent, so we kind of had a mini reunion back then, and I was a 13-year-old kid, now I'm a 53-year-old man, so we were all a little bit worse for the wear, but it was really good getting to see everybody.
I remember being that
almost like we never were apart.
I remember being that age too, when you see these girls, and the hormones act up and you get all excited. But you're at that age, you just don't know what to do, but you like what you see. So I kind of get where you're coming from there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you see the movie, you'll see that when I say they were beautiful girls, it's probably a major understatement. Obviously, Ashley went on to be a Playboy centerfold. Mm-hmm. Lisa was just like a beauty queen herself. So it was, did wonders for me. I've been a fat young kid when I was little, and I was just growing up, and here I have these beautiful girls they're nice to me and paying attention to me, and so that was kind of a neat thing.
Is that movie available on Blu-ray yet, or do you know?
In Blu-ray, I don't know. I mean, it's on DVD, but I don't know if it's Blu-ray.
Because I know I definitely want to see it. I checked out the trailer, and I was like, oh, man, I didn't know about that movie until I looked you up to take notes before the interview, and I was like, I said, go talk to you about Bad News Bears, and that thing caught my mind. I was like, driving! Well, there's... and, of course, plays around with all sneaking people under the drive-in and people making out and all that stuff.
What's funny is one of the guys who was one of the crooks.
Yeah.
The two guys that were Gordon Hurst and Gordon went on to be another character actor. He was in Coppola's war movie.
Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now. Yeah,
I love that film.
As a matter of fact, I remember talking to him when he had just come back from the filming of it. But he and my mom stayed in touch for years and years. And then Trey Henry was the other robber. Trey had gotten the part of Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. And the day before it was due to film, he had an aneurysm and passed away.
Oh.
And that's how
Anthony
Perkins.
Anthony Hopkins.
Not Anthony Perkins. Anthony
Hopkins.
Not Anthony Perkins.
Hopkins.
Hopkins.
Yeah.
Got the part, which
won him an Oscar.
Right, and prior to that, Hopkins had been just a very well-known character actor himself. Mm-hmm. He had never been a lead until that movie, and they brought him in to fill in because Trey had passed away the day before, literally the day before filming was due to start, and they brought Hopkins in, and he won an Academy Award for it, and the rest is history. Wow. So, unlike Bad News Bears, though, many of those folks, Ken Perkins, who later married Ruth Buzzy, had his, continued to act and had his own production company, and he married Ruth. He was probably 10, 12 years younger than Ruth, and just a really, almost a Rock Hudson-like good-looking guy. And he married her, and everybody's like, he's just married for... I'll be darned, 30 years later, they're still happily married, and I keep in touch with Kent via Facebook. He's posting, and he and Ruth, or Ruthie as he called her, have just a wonderful idyllic life. out in West Texas.
Wow.
So,
That is awesome, and you don't hear about a lot of relationships like that lasting today. I think it's encouraging when you got a couple, especially that was in the industry, staying together.
Right, and almost 40 years later, 35 years later, together, and just still very, very much in love. I mean, he can't post anything without talking about Ruthie. On Facebook, so he just God bless him. It's great, and they didn't listen to people who thought there were other reasons behind the marriage. They went their own way, did their own thing, and I'll be darned, they've stayed married a lot longer than most people in Hollywood have.
Oh, right, you're right there.
So something for them really to be proud of.
Wow. Well, you know what? I really appreciate you coming on here tonight. Steve Joyner is right. You're every bit the awesome guy to talk to as he said you are.
Well, thank you.
We got to celebrate the Bad News Bears, and even, got me a little memory boost of the old drive-in with your drive-in movie, which I definitely got to see. I'm interested to see that. But
I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Oh yeah,
Always a pleasure.
Well, he gave me contact information to two of the Bad News Bears. So, yeah, he's put me contact for David Pollack, who I haven't reached out to yet. But
David's a great interview. You'll enjoy it.
Oh yeah. So, but actually, when I went to interview you tonight, I just saw that movie Drive-In. I was like. That stuck out to me even more than Bad News Bears. I had to find out a little bit about that movie. So there you go.
You ought to rent it because it's an enjoyable watch.
Well, I suspect it'll probably bring back some memories for me, because I don't know about where you are, but we don't have drive-ins here anymore. So,
but they're making a comeback here. Of course, I'm in Texas. Land's cheap. The weather's good, so they have long runs here. I imagine where you're at, the season's fairly short, but I mean they can basically run them year-round here.
Well, I think the closest we have to one, I heard there's one in Sussex, so yeah. But you say you're on Facebook?
I certainly am.
You mind if I add you?
Not at all.
Well, I'll do that. You'll get an ad from me. Well, listen, before I let you go, I was wondering if you'd do a plug for my show.
Sure.
Yeah. Just state your name and who you played in the Bad News Bears. And my name is Greg Gilbert. My show is called Python's Paradise. Python like the snake, because that's my DJ name. And from New Brunswick, Canada.
Okay. You gonna cue me or?
Yep. You go right now if you like.
Okay. This is Gary Cavagnaro, Engelberg from the Bad News Bears, on Python's Paradise, talking with Greg about old times. Everybody who gets a chance to, give it a listen. You'll have a lot of fun catching up with him on things that have happened in the last 30 years.
Well, thank you so much, Gary Cavagnaro, for coming on here tonight. It was such an extreme pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise. You have a wonderful evening.
And I will, when this gets ready to podcast out, I will get the link to you. If I get you on Facebook, I'll send it to you right there.
Oh, great. I'd really enjoy hearing that. Thank you.
It'll be a few months down the road, so just be patient with me, but it will come.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
God bless you, and you keep hitting home runs.
All right. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.